All right. Well, welcome again, everybody. Good to see you all, members and friends of AME50, of course, Accessible Transportation and Mobility Committee. I think for most of the attendees I see here, you've been with our meetings previously, but if you're newly, attending this virtual meeting with our committee, we welcome you and are glad to see you as a participant in this conversation. As you noticed in the chat, people are putting in their name and organization there, and if you can do so as well, go ahead and put that in the chat, and that'll help us with attendance. Just to do some brief introductions in case you don't know us. My name is Todd Hansen. I'm a researcher with the Texas A&M Transportation Institute and located in Houston, Texas. I focus on public transit research. And Judy, do you want to give a brief introduction?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Glad to have you here, old friends and new friends. I'm Judy Shanley, and I'm the National Director of Transportation and Mobility at the National Office of Easter Seals. I live and work out of my home in Boston, and I'm staffed on several projects funded by the Federal Transit Administration and the National Science Foundation. Excited to be here. Thanks for your participation. Thanks, Todd.
Perfect. And you'll hear from some of our other committee chair positions later, but just to introduce them, if you don't know them already, Yohai Eisenberg is our committee research coordinator. I think he's here. I think I saw him. Hey, Yohai. And he's going to talk about our research problem statement development later in the presentation. We're going to hear from Chungbo Ai in a second, our paper review coordinator, and all the great effort he did to review the papers that we received. And then for our communications committee, we have Subash and Susan. Susan won't be able to make it today, but we'll fill in for her talking about the newsletter updates later in our agenda. And then Subash helps maintain and update our website and communications and keeps our website looking great and spiffy with all our up-to-date information. So let me go ahead and just walk through the agenda real quick that we'll go over for the call. And I think I sent this out. If you're on our members and friends list, you would have gotten this agenda over email, but just as a brief overview, we're going to first hear from Chungbo about the papers, updates on the papers that we received for AME50 for consideration for presentation and or publication and the outcomes of that process. That will tie into discussion of our meeting sessions that we have planned for the TRB annual upcoming in January. As a lot of those papers tie into our poster and lectern sessions, and we have really a lot planned for this year. So we'll hear, I'll walk through at that point our sessions that we have planned or co-sponsored. I'll also talk about the paratransit subcommittee, which our committee AME50 is involved in, and give you an update about that. Then we want to have a discussion about our committee session, our committee meeting at the annual meeting in January, and talk about ideas and contributions for that meeting and hear from you about what you would like to make sure is included in our agenda as Judy and I are putting that together for the upcoming TRB meeting. We'll get an update on newsletter information, including a new guest editor a component that we are going to be starting up soon and are excited about. We'll have our report outs from committee liaisons, and so those are folks involved with AME50 that are also members or friends with other committees that we've identified. And then we'll talk about the transit conference and some discussion about needs to keep that ball moving forward in terms of planning for the next transit conference. I'm not sure if Bill from TRB is here to provide an update, but if he's able to join, we'll have a section for TRB updates there. We'll hear from Yohai about research statement teams and updates on those activities and the work that he's been leading. And then we'll have a wrap up with other topics and discussion at the end of the meeting. And just as a reminder, of course, folks have been signing into the chat box already. So thank you for doing so. If you could, during the meeting, if you're not speaking, please mute your microphone, and so we don't get background noise from folks. And Judy and I will try to mute folks if it looks like your microphone is on accident. And then we, of course, throughout want to have opportunity for people to raise their hand or unmute and speak. When you do so, just make sure, as we always say, to respect the other person that's speaking at the time. We'll get to everybody in terms of comments, and just be respectful of that. Be open to ideas with different ideas and perspectives, of course, from people speaking. And then Judy and I, if you have a technical issue, it looks like everybody's doing okay, but we'll try to resolve it in the chat. We'll keep an eye out for comments in the chat if that's easier to ask a question or to indicate your interest or involvement with something. We'll keep an eye on the chat, as well as any raised hands or unmuting that happens. And so with that, and it looks like we're up to 41 participants total, so this is great. Chungbo, do you want to go ahead and talk about the paper reviews?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, thank you for introducing me. I mean, I just think I'm the annoying guy that send everybody emails reminding their review are due. So I guess 2 days. So, again, first of all, thank you for the reviewers, and they did the hard lifting works, and then I'm just coordinating all the papers. This year we received slightly more than last year. We had, I think, 33, 34, depending on one that's on the edge, but we have 39 this year. And then we accepted 24 papers for presentations, and then 3 accepted to proceed with the TR or further review. And most of the reviewers, well, I'll explain a little later, but most of the review papers who had received 3 reviewers, and then there are a few received a minimum of 2, which is required by the TRB. And as you notice, I send out I mean it for sending out those emails. I send out more than 200 requests. We have slightly less than half of responded and then eventually submitted their review, which is, I think, is great. Again, thank you, reviewers. Last year, I actually sent out to 84 people. The reason why the difference here is because of feedback we get. I mean, we expanded our reviewing pool to a larger group, and then so that not everybody had to review 2 papers, sometimes 3 papers last cycle. So this year, most of the people, I think, only reviewed 1 paper, and then there are a couple that just requested for more, and they did some of the emergency, so did the second review. So again, thank you for that. I apologize for my noise and just in the middle of another meeting, so it's people walking by. But regarding the topic, I guess this is just my traditions. I make a little word cloud about what's the titles, and then actually the word clouds coming from the abstracts, removing all those irrelevant words, and you can see the word of older adults mobility. Those are standing out. But in general, I think in line with, if you guys remember the questionnaire Todd sent out about 2 years ago or a year ago, and in our previous round of review, I think that the themes seems to align pretty well with that as well. But I mean, as I listed, the key topics are regarding the older populations, on-demand mobility and technology, which is, I think, is always the trends, and public transit and paratransit transportation, pedestrian accessibility, and the trip planning, it seems to be on the rise. And then the last one, actually, I noticed there are a bunch of case studies and implementation papers that are happening, hopefully can become some of the best practices for different, I guess, different parts of the world. I think that's something interesting. But overall, these are, I guess, a very quick summary of the paper review. Todd, if you can move to the next slides. Just for full transparency, the criteria that we did for evaluation, we did it pretty consistently with the previous review. The only, I guess, two different things we did this year is one is the quantitative readings. TRB added one question regarding the methodology sufficiency. So basically, just a separate section, I guess, puts part of the question 2 and question 7 into a separate question. So that's why we redistribute the percentage a little bit, just to make sure those evaluations are fair and square for everybody. We follow this rating systems for all the 39 papers. And certainly question 5 and 6 are those I guess the question regarding whether this paper should be forwarded or transferred to the PR review, so which is separately treated in our review. The second thing we did a little difference is, as you noticed, so we had some of the papers only have 2 reviewers, although it's a meet the requirement for TRB, but I mean sometimes those reviews could be contradicting with each other. That's why we had a little I guess checking systems regarding their readings and whether the reading are consistent with their narratives, and also if the narratives are convincing over the other. And actually Todd and myself and a couple of actually emergency reviewers did help a lot for really doing some of the I guess additional reviews on those, which is great. And then what we call it tiebreaker. But most of the reviews I think are pretty consistent with what's the I guess the comprehensiveness of the review. And then again, that goes back to my very first point. So thank you, reviewers. And I think what I noticed, another excellent things is like, I think more reviewers are providing more narratives and more, I guess, structured comments rather than, oh, this is good or bad. I think that's terrific. And hopefully we can continue with that. But and that's really all I have to say. And yeah, and I guess hopefully you don't have to hear from me in the next year or so, and then I'll send those notes if I'm still working with this position. But thank you again. And I have to run out of the meeting very quickly. But if you guys have any questions regarding the criteria or any, and I guess we can share the titles, but it's gonna appear in the program very soon. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Chungbo. I know you have to run, but yeah, thank you for that summary, and we'll talk a little bit more about the process and recap it a little bit at our annual meeting too. So yeah, if you need to run, go ahead, please do. And I'll just Yohai, did you have a question real quick? See Yohai's hand up.
And I don't see him anymore. But I just, before Yohai weighs in, I just wanted to say thank you to Shengbo too. You and I, Todd and I, for those of you who don't know, participate in a quarterly meeting and sometimes more with all of the committees in our section. And we get to kind of compare processes and outcomes of the review, the paper review process. And our process largely is way ahead of other committees. So I'm pretty proud of that and the work that you all do to make that happen. We have a lot of diverse participation as reviewers, and I think that's really important to maintain and enhance the integrity of the process. So thank you to you all, and thank you to Todd and Shengbo who really lead that effort. There's Yohai.
Hi, yeah, technical issues. Yeah, also echoing Judy's points. Thanks so much for all the hard work for this paper review process. One thing I was just going to ask about that I don't know if you'll be able to answer, but sometimes with the reviews for TRB that I've received in the past, it's kind of like clear that the reviewer like doesn't know my area of research at all, and like, yeah, kind of has provided reviews that kind of make that clear. And I'm just wondering more broadly if, I don't know if, and I guess it's a challenge, right, within our committee, that we have such a wide range of topics and expertise and I'm just wondering, if you have a sense for how that is working, and I don't know, maybe it's just me, but
it definitely, yeah, it definitely happens actually more frequently than I hoped for. But that's the part of the reason, certainly because the diversity of our group. And then although we focus on qualitative works previously, but I think more quantitative paper was submitted in the past, at least the 2 cycles that I observed. That's one reason. The other is definitely I can improve my job, or I guess our committee's job in general. This year, we didn't submit any of the I guess pre-questionnaire regarding whether reviewers want to review certain type or categories of papers, and I guess we can do a better job on that. But I mean, even doing that, I think last cycle we still have a lot of I guess mismatches which I had to reorganize. So that's definitely a ongoing issue, and any comments or suggestions are welcome. I think it's just also it will significantly reduce the work that I have for sending additional requests for different reviewers. Just for everybody's reference, I mean, I think the TRB did a good job for coordinators to have a tool to search for relevant topics, but unfortunately, many of the papers, although they basically just fit into their keywords and the topics in broader categories, so that I guess they get visibilities for more committees. But many of those matching pieces for tagged with the reviewers are not necessarily their, I guess, expertise or like their specific expertise. So that part, I guess, again, I think it will be nice. Maybe internally we can have other conversations how to improve this. And then one thing that maybe we can request our reviewers, members and friends, just to be a little bit more specific in their tags associated with their reviewer roles, and that will be definitely helpful. So yeah.
That sounds great. And, I don't know if you wanted to share that pre-survey at all, but maybe there's some additions people could make or help to customize the types of categories so that everyone feels like their work is represented. But I'm sure
I think that
other people could help with that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Yohai. I think that's a good idea to revive that as part of the, maybe we can focus on that as part of this process during the annual meeting in terms of what would be best to get the right people assigned to reviewers, whether it's through a survey type tool or other ways identified. I think that, and I'll also add, and I see Roger has a question, that Chungbo and I both try to look at reviewer comments that where there is some sort of mismatch or disconnect, and reviewer number 3 clearly didn't see something or wasn't expert enough in the subject matter, and we take that into account and might throw that review out essentially. In cases like that, we try to guard against that, rather than just looking at the scores. Roger?
I was going to say that some journals ask reviewers to say how confident they are about the subject area or how knowledgeable they are. I'm not sure we can change the process, but if that were in there, it would perhaps help whoever's managing the process to kind of form a judgment. Otherwise, give slightly more weight to the reviewers know what they're talking about than those who are less familiar with the subject. But I realise we have to work within the system we have, but it might be worth thinking about or suggesting it in appropriate places just to get a feel. Because I mean, I get something I don't know much about, I think I know quite a lot about. I'm very happy to do both, but I feel I'd like more emphasis on the ones I know about and the ones I don't know about the subject area.
That's in my opinion, that's a great suggestion. I mean, there are 2 ways that actually can be done. One is that the TRB, the editorial manager, can have that option enabled. That would be great. The other is actually there's one section, you guys probably remember, the one section can leave the secret comments to the editor, to the handlers. So we can request our reviewers to basically fill in the confidence scores to the coordinator so that we can have that incorporating our formula. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Roger. And any other questions from folks on this? Sorry about my my dog, if you hear him in the background, keeping me safe. Yes, I see a raised hand. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Archana, and I just have a comment. I'm thinking whether it might be counterintuitive to try to weed out the disciplinary diversity of input. Simply, it's like, if we didn't have this title, even just accessible transportation and mobility, it marries transportation and mobility and public health expertise together. So it's almost like everybody's coming from, even the experts. It's like, these days, the field of action is very interdisciplinary, and I think we want to nurture that. And to address a concern of, it's like, people, I think, asking about, I think Robert made a good point about, there's usually a question, even I have used that, whether you're a disciplinary expert or not, and then if I'm not, then I just say it's like, that I'm making structural comments. And I think that they are still very valid comments about, because I think people, usually reviewers, would be able to assess the internal correlations and construct and validity of the argument, and probably will speak to that. So I don't think they should be thrown out, but just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, thank you. One more question from Maria.
It's not a question, is also one of the concerns is everybody sees different perspectives. Some people might have a lot of information, knowledge about human behavior. Other people might have more information about codes and design and construction. But I think that the comments I think the commentator, whoever's making the review, should emphasize what they're looking at and the perspective they're coming across. But we should never negate comments because they come from the knowledge that that person has and wants to share. So I don't think that others should judge or validate their comments, and those receiving the comments, if there wants to be a final QA before they go to the person writing the paper, that's another thing. But comments should not be validated or not by others.
Yeah, I to both those comments, the reviewer or the paper writer gets all the comments from the reviewers that are assigned to them, in terms of the perspective, and in terms of including those perspectives. So and I think I made a comment earlier about throwing something out. I meant in terms of like if there's a mismatch in understanding the expertise for a particular research thing, but that's in the weighting and decision making. It still is included as part of what the paper author gets with that. And I think overall with this, and we'll pick up on this at the general committee meeting in January, is we definitely want people with different perspectives, backgrounds, expertise areas. We don't want a homogenous set of reviewers for each paper, and we with certain topics, for instance. But we also want to make sure that we have a good comfort level match, I think is the right balance, and it's a hard balance to achieve. So I think this is a good discussion on how we can best do that, and maybe we think about the tools to help with that matchmaking process to make Chungbo's life easier when we do this the next time around.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And I'll echo, I know I've been in the annoying position that Chungbo has been in before, trying to send more emails to get people to review. And so but he did a great job, and I'll just again this year and echo that as we move on. So thanks again for the comments there. Just to go over our sessions that we have planned at the annual. So a lot of the papers, or the papers that were accepted for presentation are included in one of these three first bulleted sections, either the poster session or two of our lectern sessions that we have as a committee. And so based on the short turnaround that Judy and I have with the paper review process, we have to, once we figure out which papers are quality and worthy of presentation, we have to determine, okay, how do we want to include these as part of presentation? And so based on similar topic areas like Chungbo was talking about earlier, formed two lectern sessions for our, based on overlap in subject matter. We did get a lot of papers on mobility and travel options for older adults. And so we have one lectern session of papers dealing with different research on older adults and transportation. And then we had some other papers that were focused more on the ADA and travel barriers to accessibility with that. And so that's the other lectern session. And then the remaining papers that were accepted for presentation will be part of an overall poster session. That's kind of a catch-all. As a committee the last few years, we've kind of had just one poster session. And so rather than trying to break them up. And so that is those planned presentations from the papers. We also have a lectern session, this fourth bullet, advancing policy research and practice around air travel for passengers that use mobility devices. That is, it was originally going to be a workshop, but there's some communication mix-ups, and so this ended up as a lectern session that our section AME00 is supporting as for their lectern session slot. And this is picking up on the accessibility in air travel previous session that we had as a lectern last annual meeting, as well as the webinar we had earlier this year with that. And Judy, I don't know if you wanted to chime in on that.
Yeah, one thing that's really exciting this year, and I noticed a difference between last year and this year, is we're getting a lot more requests to partner on papers, proposals, sessions, and this comes from the Secretary of Transportation's office. You all may know that in the US there's some rulemaking around being able to bring wheelchairs on board aircraft, and also expanding lavatory size to accommodate caregivers and people that use mobility devices. And so this is kind of following up on that. And as Todd said, we had a very successful webinar in September, and this is a second piece of it where we're really talking about the implications for research and practice on mobility devices on wheelchairs. So it's pretty exciting to be asked by the Secretary of Transportation's office to help coordinate a session like this. It's a hot topic that has a lot of connections between the work that we do in general in terms of accessing transportation and facilitating inclusive transportation options. It is affected and affects wayfinding and pedestrian navigation around airports, because if you're here, you are building amazing inclusive air services, but if people can't get to an airport and can't navigate within an airport, then it's all for naught. So we're excited to be doing that work. So thanks, Todd.
Absolutely, yeah. So the lectern sessions and the poster session, we don't know what days they will be. Same with our committee meeting, just because that part of the schedule is not out yet. But these are things to look for, and we'll probably consolidate this as part of a email or newsletter prior to the annual meeting as well. Of things to look out for and make sure we're under schedule. The intersection of the other workshops that are on here, one Yohai is heavily involved in, I believe, at the intersection of disability justice, pedestrian safety, and health. And this is also working with AME70, the Transportation and Health Committee, and then ACH 10, the Pedestrian Committee. And so that's going to be, we know that's going to be Sunday morning, and we highly encourage folks to attend that workshop. It's going to be pretty exciting. Yohai just put in the chat the link to that workshop. And then we also have, we're co-sponsoring or signing off on these other workshops that are either Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon. One is being led by AP055, the Rural Public Transportation Committee on microtransit and on-demand services. The other in the afternoon, Judy just mentioned a little bit about making navigation, universal design practices for airports, which includes heavily accessibility and navigation in the airport. That's with the aviation group, and Judy and I have been on a lot of planning meetings and calls for that, and I think it's going to be I'm learning a lot about airports, as being a guy that doesn't do any research in airports, so it's going to be an exciting session. And then also Sunday afternoon, AP090, the Transit Data Committee is doing this mobility data interoperability principles workshop as well. And so that's another one that we're involved with a little bit in terms of planning.
And just so you know, we are given, each committee within the section is only given a limited number of lectern and workshop slots. As you could imagine, with all of the numbers of committees that TRB has, we don't have an infinite amount of time to share our content and our sessions. And so TRB gives us, I think, 2 or 3 slots for lectern sessions, maybe 1 or 2 slots for workshops, and that's it. So it's a pretty competitive process, so thank you all. The other thing that I think that our committee is really recognized for, and you could see by the diversity of partner committees both inside and outside of the transportation sector, is in our triennial strategic plan that we're required to do for TRB. One of our objectives is to coordinate with other committees and also coordinate with other sectors outside of TRB. And so I think the heterogeneous topics that we have in our that will be presented at TRB is indicative of our interest in collaborating with a broad range of partners. So just wanted you to be aware of that.
Yeah. To what Judy said, I think and she mentioned this earlier as well, our work with other committees and people reaching out to us to do things together has been something that has been great to meeting that goal, that we have for that connectivity with other topic areas and folks in TRB committees, which segues nicely to the paratransit subcommittee. This, of course, has been in existence since the paratransit committee was dissolved and became a joint subcommittee a few years back between our committee, AP055, the Rural Transit Committee, and AP020, which is the Innovative Technologies and Transit Committee. Both of those titles are longer and than I said, but those are kind of the shorthand that I remember them as. And so we've been, Judy and I have been meeting with the chairs of those other 2 committees to talk about how we can increase our involvement and connection with our subcommittee that, we're directly connected with. And Judy and I learning about subcommittees, it turns out there's far fewer structural rules and things with subcommittees. They, are mostly formed to exist and usually exist for a given period of time rather than indefinitely. Though with the paratransit subcommittee, this is going to be an ongoing topic of interest and that needs special attention, obviously. And so basically there's not in much formal structure other than having a subcommittee chair. So there's a new subcommittee chair, Erin McAuliffe, who is essentially the acting director of accessible services with the San Francisco Municipal Transit Agency. And so she's taking over that role, and we've had some discussion with her about making sure that we're proactively connected with what's going on in the subcommittee, including research development and any other sorts of activities that are, cross-pollinate, essentially. One thing we talked about and we want to solicit interest for today is having a designated representative from each committee. And even though multiple members of this committee and other committees are likely to attend the paratransit subcommittee as well, we want to make sure that we at least have a designated point person that is kind of, make sure that our committee, interest and activities are plugged in to what's going on with this subcommittee. And so this would be, kind of a designated person to make sure that you attend the subcommittee meeting, of course, in January, and then any other ongoing, activities as part of this. So I wanted to, essentially ask now, and you can follow up by email or indicate in the chat, and I can follow up. If you'd be interested in being the designated rep for AME50 on the subcommittee, then we can, go back to Aaron and the other chairs and say, okay, here's our person. They're going to have their own persons as well. It's not a real formal position with TRB or anything like that, but it will help, at least with this goal of Judy and ours to make sure that we're more active in our conversations together with all the folks involved on the paratransit subcommittee side. And so Steve, I see you're interested. Thanks for that. Just one, I did check to see, and thank you, David, as well. I did check to see with Bill and made a note as they're putting together the schedule to try and make sure that we don't have a scheduling conflict with our committee sessions and activities with the paratransit subcommittee. And so that way we can, obviously we can't, as he's trying to navigate the schedule, there's going to be some conflicts that occur, for some folks, but this way, hopefully at least we won't have overlap in our committee time and theirs. So I'll note Steve and Dave. Steve just endorsed David. All right. Well, if anyone else is interested, I'll follow up with you both. But if anyone else is interested, you can indicate that you are, and just send me, if I don't know you already, formally. If you could send me, a brief paragraph about your interest and experience in paratransit, that would be helpful too. So next, I think, Judy, I can hand it over to you if you want to lead this discussion in terms of
Sure.
what we want to have for our committee session.
Sure. Every year we struggle with time. We always have lots and lots of content and not a lot of time to do it in. I know that TRB is looking for a bigger meeting space for us. I don't know if they'll accomplish that. There's limitations in terms of the hotel meeting space, but I know that every year we outgrow the current meeting room that we're in. So hopefully that will change, but I suspect the time that we have for the meeting is not going to change. There's just too many things going on at TRB for them to be able to make that accommodation for us. But if folks have any ideas regarding guest speakers that they want to have participate, we've heard from some national projects funded by FTA and the Department of Transportation. If you want to be part of the agenda to make a formal short presentation with slides, we can accommodate that. We want certainly a well-balanced group of guest speakers, and we have to be really careful because we don't want people selling anything. So obviously any guest speaker has to be adding to the mission and the purposes of our committee, and the content has to be aligned with what your needs are. The other thing is what we can do is have quick fire presentations on any current research. So maybe 5-minute overviews of the research you're doing, the implications, and Todd and I will send out a template for you to use so that all of the quick fire presentations are pretty consistent. And it's just for it's a great way for you to introduce your research, to get preliminary questions from other members, to find partners potentially, and to learn about resources that may exist that could complement your research. So if you have any interest in doing that, please let Todd and I know. In terms of the content for the meeting, some of the content will be procedural and process things that we've just talked about in these update meetings that we have. We may just have similar kinds of discussion, but if there's any particular content areas that you want to focus on, we'd love to do that. Or if there's any other concerns that you've had from your participation in past meetings, or any other concerns that you want to raise during this meeting, there's usually a debrief after TRB where Todd and I get to go to TRB as well as the session lead and talk about experiences, talk about any feedback from you all, and they're pretty responsive to the kinds of comments that you all make. So if there's anything that any concerns or issues that arise that could be a time to address them, certainly beforehand would be better, so we potentially have some answers and solutions for you. We could bring it to the attention of TRB before the meeting. But again, we invite diverse participation, active participation. We don't want this to be Todd and I just talking like we usually do. So it'll be nice to have you all be active participants in that process. So Todd, was there anything else that I missed?
Well, I guess if looking for hands, if anyone has thoughts on what they would like to see from that meeting, and we usually have 4 hours with a break, and so there is time, but we want to make sure in proactive planning, for different parts of the discussion that we have ample time for that. One broad question, I see Yohai has his hand up, but one broad question I have for folks that attended in January was, the quick fire presentations, as we call them, the like 5 to 6 minute presentations on research. There's other committees that do that as well. I think it worked okay last year in terms of the topics we had, but I'd be curious about feedback on that, as well as for anyone who attended virtually. How did the owls that we had in the room in terms of picking up sound as well as video, that was a new feature that we added to the virtual meeting to make it to the hybrid meeting to help with the virtual connection. So I'd be curious about anyone's experience with that, and see if we want to try and do that again.
And also, just so you all know, TRB really doesn't support that. That's, Todd and I wanting to make the meeting as inclusive for those of you who are not able to travel or can't travel. So the technology is as good as Todd and I have access to without incurring a lot of cost. So yeah, we would love your feedback on that, because that's something we could do again. We're not publicizing that widely. TRB doesn't want us to publicize it widely. They want people to obviously attend in person, but we would love any feedback that you have regarding that.
Yohai?
Oh yeah, just kind of in terms of your third bullet on content priorities, I could help lead this part of the meeting, but was hoping that we could spend some chunk of time there to develop key priorities around research. And obviously we can start from a lot of the things we already have from the triennial plan, but obviously we get new people and there's new topics that come up, new issues, and so I think having some time and we could maybe think of a way of making that somewhat interactive where people move around the room, or we break up into small groups to brainstorm those ideas. I think that could be a neat way to develop those priorities and then, kind of use them for the rest of the year in terms of planning research problem statements and things like that.
I like that. I like breaking up. I hope that our room is conducive to that.
Right.
That has been the only challenge, but I love that. And maybe thinking about potential broad topical areas that could invite that interaction in small groups, I think is amazing. And definitely building on our triennial. We certainly want to make that connection. So yay, that's great.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, thanks, Johan. I agree. We should have definitely some discussion on that, but think about the best way to do that. For sure. And maybe that could be a big block of time that we focus on during the meeting.
Yeah, and we have been already approached by several people who want to be on our agenda. One of them is from the Access Board and with the ProWAG guidelines. So I thought that was pretty exciting. We want to be mindful too that we have a big universe of members that represent the world. And so we want to have topics that would resonate with not only people from the United States, but elsewhere. So when you're thinking about your content and any sessions, any content that you want to share, think about a broader audience as opposed to just a US-based audience.
Any other and if you think about something later, you can get it to Judy and I, of course, over email, but any other comments or ideas, questions right now on the annual meeting, committee meeting at the annual meeting content for AME50?
I don't know if it would make sense for the committee session or maybe this is more of a webinar idea for the future, but like somehow maybe having like a student session to promote, kind of involvement of student members to be able to present. Obviously, like they can submit papers like everybody and can have that highlighted, but maybe thinking about some kind of dedicated student session could just help promote more student involvement.
And I would encourage, go ahead, Todd.
You, Judy.
I was thinking about that young professionals
That's
group
what I was thinking too.
Yeah, I mean, the leader of that young professionals TRB group in general has done a really amazing job of inviting the committees into that forum. And I would encourage students to be part of that young professional. So maybe what we could do is we'll pull out some text about that meeting and we'll share it with all of you so that you could share it with your students and young professionals. I want to know how they define young professional. I don't know. That thing about chronological age, I don't know, does that make me young or old? But it was really great. And I'm kind of a mentor to students that I've met at that forum. So I encourage, all of you, if to learn more about that young professionals group that TRB has and ways that you can be involved as a professional to help the career development of new and aspiring professionals in our field. Yeah,
I think it is under 35, like Noah said, but it's for the young and young at heart. Is what I've been told, and it's certainly not closed off to a certain age limit or whatnot. I think we'll certainly link to that, and maybe we can thanks David for your comment. The link to that session, the young professionals group, and maybe Yohai, to your comments, and Steve, your question on how do we promote that. We could issue a call to our members and friends, and like Noah, a recent graduate, recent graduates or young professionals to be these quick fire presentations. Maybe that's a way we could do it. There's also, I was thinking with that young professionals group, since maybe the topics that they're having in their session presentation that are specific to accessibility, if there's not an overlap in the schedule in the meeting, and we don't know yet based on what's going to be planned, but maybe we could Judy and I can connect with them and see if they would have time to drop by real quick and present at our meeting as well. And that could be a good way to feature that too.
Neat.
Yeah, and Anna in the chat offered that she's suggesting to have a welcome for those folks who are participating remotely, and I think that's a really great idea. I think timing is always an issue, but Anna, if you have any ideas regarding how we could accomplish that either before the TRB meeting or right before or at the meeting, I'd love to get your input on that. But I think the more opportunity we have to engage people that physically can't be at the TRB meeting would be important. So thank you.
Yeah, happy to brainstorm. This is Anna around that. We're going to be starting a seminar with community members in January, like a weekly seminar that's going to run for 6 months. So this will be, before that really kicks off, but maybe the folks who have agreed to participate in that could attend remotely. And yeah, we can maybe do something in advance, kind of giving them some context. So
yeah, great. And I think Ling, yeah.
Okay. I want to talk about the content priorities.
Okay.
I keep on getting rather frustrated because the last time the Transit content theme was supposed to be resilience, and it got merged with the demand responsive transit, and then suddenly this word resilience had disappeared. And even in the sessions, there weren't much about that. Now, the world conflict brought home the whole issue of resilience, about especially on the accessible transportation group. You see the evacuation, the people got blocked off, and I just had a feeling that this keep kind of being elusive from our committee.
Yeah. Did you see that? I think, Todd, you were involved in a publication, a TCRP publication regarding emergency procedures during COVID and people with disabilities. I don't know if you guys have all seen that, but it's a great resource, and there's content related to resilience in there, Ling. So maybe you could look at that and see if there's anything that strikes you, and you could share that at the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I could share that. That was a recent TCRP report.
Yep.
Thanks, Judy. Yeah, it was on transit and other transportation services for people with disabilities and older adults during emergencies, and using lessons learned from COVID-19 for planning for future emergencies, and proactively mitigating and responding to any impacts from the emergency that would potentially create barriers to those groups to ride the service. So but yeah, I think linked to your question, I think it's an important note for us to, when we have a goal like that in terms of what the theme or the mission of a whether it's a conference or a given initiative that we have, to make sure that we keep our eye on the ball and keep that central to what what we're continually aiming for with that. I think that's also an important note for us to have. But I'll share that report with you, and maybe I can put it in the chat if I am able to get to it in time.
Okay.
Yeah, and maybe we could do something more with the emergency response committee, because to my knowledge, we haven't really had any collaboration with them. Ling, I don't know if you're active in that committee, but maybe you and Annabelle, that's a good role for you to be a liaison to. Maybe you can be our intermediary with that committee and kind of keep them apprised of the issues that we talk about, and then conversely, you can bring back to our committee the topics that you've heard them address.
So we need contact person.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. And I see that Steve asks about connecting with the University Transportation Centers. Todd would know better, but I would hope that they're engaged in our work.
Yeah, I think he was saying that in reference to the student involvement.
Oh, okay.
In particular.
Okay.
And so I made a note of that as an idea for that as well.
Good. Okay, great.
Well, we'll move. Please continue to put your feedback on the committee meeting session there. Judy also wanted to talk a little bit about the newsletter. Since Susan, I don't think Susan is
Susan
here.
and Sebash. I thought Sebash was going to get on. I don't think so. So just real quickly, I hope you've been getting our quarterly newsletter. Susan has done an amazing job. She's really on top of everything. I think the newsletters are really well written, but we were thinking that it'd be really neat to have kind of a guest contributor or a guest, not maybe not an editor is the right word, but someone that could solicit articles for us and actually write potentially. So we sent out a note to you all, and Seema Singh from Cambridge Systematics has volunteered to do that. And so in January, you should be seeing a newsletter from our committee that has content from Seema. And she's going to be reaching out to colleagues across the field to get content for articles so that we've got not only the kind of process stuff that we include in the newsletter, but content stuff too. So if anyone ever has any ideas for content for the newsletter, please send a note to Susan or Todd and I, and we'll be happy to consider it for the newsletter. So.
Yeah, I think it'll follow the guidelines for newsletter content that Susan had previously shared, and we have available on our committee website as well. So we want to put a plug in for that. But yeah, we're excited about the next few newsletter issues and trying to expand what we could do with that. I wanted now for our liaisons that are in attendance, if you can, a quick minute on what's going on with your committee that you're involved with outside of AME50. So we'll start at the top of the list with ACH 10, Yohai.
Yeah, I unfortunately haven't been sorry, Ping, following too well. I think a lot of it was just the big flow of the committee reviews, and all that for the last period. But they were a sponsor on our workshop, and yeah, I think that's all that I've seen lately. Yeah, it was a big focus on the paper reviews,
papers and such.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. Thanks, Yohai. Sarah Davidson, it looks like you're here. Any new updates from ACH 40 to share? Let's see. If not, we'll go down the list. Joanne, I think I saw Joanne earlier.
I think Melissa's on. Melissa for AKD.
Oh, Melissa is
80.
on. Okay. Melissa.
I'm here. So the Roundabout Committee met recently, and many of you know that the NCHRP 1043, the new guide for roundabouts, came out in this summer. So it has a lot of good information. One of the things that they added for accessibility is guide strips at some of the bicycle slip ramps that come from the street onto the sidewalk. So that's a big improvement for roundabouts for accessibility. They're talking about doing a roundabout conference in 2025 at the Geometric Design Symposium. And if anyone has not been to the Roundabout Video Theater at TRV, it's really an interesting activity that the Roundabout Committee sponsors every year, and they're trying to move it to a more central location. It's always been kind of stuck back in a corner in the past, but I would encourage people to take a look at that. And it's usually run by a lot of roundabout professionals who could use some accessibility input into
That's a nice way of saying it,
yes.
Melissa. Where is that roundabout demonstration? Is it in the exhibit hall typically?
They're trying to, usually they have a room somewhere, and you kind of have to know where it is. But they're trying to move it this year to someplace more central so that more people can find it and just kind of wander in by accident.
Wonderful. If you
So
find out about where it
Yeah.
is, will you send it to us so we could share it with everybody?
Will do. And I also, just real quickly, TRB research project on tactile guide strips is in its draft phase. So we have the draft final report of that to review right now, and it'll talk about tactile directional indicators and detectable warning strips that are different than the detectable warning. The detectable warning systems we use at curb ramps. So be on the lookout for that to come out in the next few months.
Nice.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Melissa.
Thank you.
Joanne, AME20.
Hi. There were a few things that were focused at the Committee on Women and Gender and Transportation. Primarily, they're focused on transportation and women's safety and how to travel safely in different environments. And there was also a study, a report commissioned in Scotland about how women and girls are changing their behaviors in order to feel more safe when traveling in public transportation. And my thought is that people with disabilities that use public transportation may have similar or comparative issues of feeling safe when traveling using public transportation. So it might be an idea to work together with them and see if perhaps there would be a presentation or a workshop that could benefit both committees.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I guess you're saying that research is in progress or a follow-up to that report to see about the connectivity with it.
They're putting together a workshop for the next TRB annual meeting.
Okay.
On that topic, and there has been research done on that topic. So both events.
Okay. Yeah, we'll keep that in mind for sure if that's something they're planning for the future. Thanks, Joanne.
Sure.
Anna, AME70.
Oh, sorry, this is Anna. You know what? I was not able to attend the last meeting, so I don't have a report back.
No worries, no worries. I'm not sure if Renee is here for AP020. And I think I missed the last AP020 meeting.
Yeah, I don't see her, Todd.
And then I'm just going down the list real quick. I don't see Jennifer. For AP055, rural transit, I know this past last week on Tuesday, they had their big effort for their research research problem statement developments. And so they formed several mini teams to go over their research topic priorities, a couple of which include accessibility with that. So I think some of our members and friends are plugged in on that. I can go through that list and see if there's of those that concern accessibility or paratransit in particular, to make sure that we have a member or friend that's there. And then if not, I can also share those in the minutes that we have from this meeting. to see if you want to get involved, you know, as those folks are working on mostly TCRP problem statements or synthesis, but also NCHRP. And so I'll look through that list to make sure we didn't miss anything. The other thing I know from AP055 is they were planning on doing their conference, DRT conference in 2024, but that's been delayed until 2025, at least. And so they're having conference struggles a little bit. I think it was a booking issue with hotel blocks and support like that. So the DRT conference has been delayed. And so that's the other news item for them. And then on AP090 to talk about transit data, they have an ongoing webinar series if you're not involved with that committee on different transit data research and topics and practices at transit agencies. That's been very good to follow if you're interested in that space. And they also have the transit data challenge, I believe is also active for this year. And I know Steve, you're on that committee as well. Is there any other updates you wanted to plug?
No, not really. It's I mean, there's one question that's sort of peripheral to data, but very important to this committee is, you know, transit data, microtransit is reliant on data. Because not only for trips just on microtransit, but for folks that transfer and making that happen. But one question that keeps popping up, and my view is not universally accepted, is when a transit system adds a microtransit zone where it didn't have service before, or if it converts a non-performing route to microtransit, does the requirement for ADA paratransit convey? And I think that if this went into court, it'd be hands down that it does. But there's a lot of folks who assume that it doesn't. And that's I think the question needs to be presented to transit systems through probably through APTA and CTAA, that they need to think hard about before they try to challenge that. Yeah,
that might be, I wonder if we can pose that as part of the paratransit subcommittee topics of interest as well, in terms, not that microtransit's obviously distinct, or paratransit's distinct from microtransit, even though it can be performed on demand as well. But maybe that's that topic area is something in particular we can look at it as far as that discussion in terms of what the subcommittee areas of discussion are, and get that connected that way.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
You might also want to look at that recent letter that came out of FTA, that dear colleague letter, because that kind of not overtly maybe necessarily, but it really tries to create the connection between on-demand and paratransit, and kind of the innovations that come with paratransit, and the applicability of the ADA in those situations prevails. So I'm not trying to I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not trying to interpret it, but that letter, if any of you have not seen it, it was pretty telling. So maybe we can make that available in our notes as well.
Thanks, Steve. Just Kate left a note for the rolling stock and motive power committee. There's discussion on occupant protection and passenger rail, and people use wheeled mobility devices that will be discussed during the annual meeting. That's pretty interesting. So we'll have to follow up with Kate on that and see where that discussion goes with that committee. Judy, did you have anything else for, I just put you with AB
Yeah,
010.
no. Just, the whole issue is the wheelchair securement and lavatory space are the hot topics. And there's some national organizations that are really spearheading research associated with bringing wheelchairs on board and the feasibility and the technical specifications. And I got to see that new Delta Technologies aircraft chair that's removable so that a person could bring a motorized device on and secure it themselves on an airplane. And the industry is moving fast and furious. So it's exciting work to be coordinating with our committee.
Absolutely. I don't see Mary on. And then I saw James, thanks for your note on the Information Systems and Technology Task Force. Judy and I will follow up with you on that webinar series and look more into that. And thanks, Steve, for linking the Dear Colleague letter. If there's any more updates you want to include, please go ahead and do so in the chat. I want to make sure we hit the last couple big bullet points with our time remaining. Judy, do you want to talk about where we are with TransEd?
Not much. We've been, we've been reaching out to other organizations to try to find an organization with whom we could piggyback on. The challenge in all of this is there's no resources to outlay so when you're negotiating with hotels or conference space, usually they require some sort of deposit, and we don't have the resources to be able to do that. And so the organization with whom we partner, there's an expectation that there's going to be some financial contribution that that organization has been made, and that's been really tough to find. Annabella hooked us up with an organization, and we're following up, and we're going to have a meeting with them, but we still don't have any definite plans for 2025. We are pretty committed that it's going to be international and not in the US, but that's certainly proving to be a challenge. So we also need a leader. Todd and I, Jeanette Jimenez is on the call, and I know that and Kit has been really active, and Roger and Annabella and Ling, and we're looking for someone to really take the lead on TransEd and help us identify venue, work on all the logistics. We've got a good planning committee. Yohai, I know, has been interested in planning, but we need a leader. We need someone to kind of take charge of this work, and is preferably someone who's been involved in TransEd. They know the kind of historical context of it. In the newsletter, I hope you saw, and we posted it to the website, Kit did an amazing job of the historical precedent for TransEd, and so that is a really helpful guidance for someone that may want to step into that role. But it's really been a challenge, and frankly, we're not getting a lot of support from TRB, so we've got to think about this in our, for ourselves, and what what's the implications for our committee. So please, continue to, I'm going to be sending out a notice about a meeting that we'll have to talk about next steps, and bring together those of you I've identified potential partners that we could tap into. But yeah, it's been a challenge similar to, I think, DRT has experienced similar challenges. It's just really hard to organize and host a conference through the committee structure of TRB. So anyone that have any ideas, I'm all ears. And that's all I have, unless people have questions.
Yeah, and I think like Judy said, we'll for those that have that are already on the sign up for the planning committee, and Stephen, thanks for we'll make a note of your interest also and get you plugged in. We'll follow up with those folks, and we'll obviously talk more about this at as part of our committee meeting. But I think Judy and I both desire to make a little bit of headway before we get to January. In terms of, if we can identify a lead for the conference planning committee, with this, and have some more follow-up on some of the ideas for collaboration, with other organizations. We want to keep that going forward. And Annabella?
Yes, sorry. I met the professor from Loughborough University
Yep.
last month in Berlin on a meeting.
Yep.
And I talked to him. And as far as I felt, I think he needs to talk to both of you.
Yeah, he had some questions, Annabelle, and we talked about having a meeting. Yeah, I think that it's hard to commit to something if you don't know what the expectation is in terms of your participation. So yeah, I was answering him back in an email, his questions, and then I felt, well, maybe it's better to have a meeting. So that's our next step.
Yeah, okay.
Great. Thank you for making that lead.
Okay, you're welcome.
I don't see Bill or James Manning on the call. So I'm just making sure. So we'll go ahead to Yohai with updates on our problem state development and research task force.
Great. Thanks, Todd. And give you some updates. So this is the group, part of the committee that helps develop problem statements for the TRB related cooperative research programs. There's a bunch of links in the slide here, but I can also put them maybe.
I can do that while you're.
Okay, well, I'm talking. Thanks.
Yeah.
Just hold off on not that I made a new sign up sheet, so just don't put the sign up sheet in there.
Okay, got it.
But yeah, we had a good year last year overall. We submitted 2 synthesis topics for TCRP and 1 problem statement for ACRP about airports, and then 3 TCRP problem statements over the summer. The ACRP one was selected to become a project, I think it's currently in development. So they were seeking people to be on the panel. Now it's in development. I know we had several people who helped develop the statement, and some of them I think volunteered to also be on the panel, which is great. But I just put in the link too as well for where you could read a little bit more about this anticipated ACRP project that I think would come out in 2024. And I guess, yeah, kind of you could kind of see that overall process where a topic got identified by members of our committee. We worked on developing a statement together and then submitted it, and it is becoming a project. And I think what one thing in terms of helping with that is to keep an eye out on panels, and maybe I'll try to put a calendar invite to kind of keep an eye on that too. It doesn't seem like it's always clear to me, like when maybe that's a question for Bill or other folks about when they update when those panel invitations are. I don't know if there's a way to get like an automatic feed for that, but I think something like that could be helpful. Right now, it doesn't seem like there's that many open panels, but the way I find it is by going through my TRB and then CRP panels and available projects, where you can then select to volunteer to be on a panel. So I'm thinking that the ones that we submitted over the summer will show up soon here. And so maybe we can, I'll try to follow up to share those opportunities as well. We have a group that is working on a NCHRP problem statement that's due November 1st, very soon. That one is focused on temporary construction barriers and examining factors that affect implementation of temporary construction routes. So I think That's going to be a great one, and Jim Elliott is helping to lead that one, and Kaylin Levin. And then in terms of new topics to consider, I was hoping to maybe have a little bit more fleshed out about these, but didn't have time. But I can put, maybe I can put them in the chat. These were topics that were shared in the previous meeting that people were interested in. So I'll put that in the chat here. Let's see. Didn't paste so well. Okay, so these are 4 topics based on suggestions from the last meeting. So what I was thinking of doing is kind of sending out another call for folks who are interested in being on these teams, and or leading one of the teams. And then from there, we can get a sense for, all right, thanks, Todd. We could get a sense for which of these seem like viable options. Some of the upcoming deadlines, after this November 1st deadline is some deadlines in February, when there is the NCHRP synthesis topics are due, as well as the BTS CRP, the what is it? What does BTS CRP stand for?
Behavioral.
Thank you.
Behavioral traffic safety.
Yes. Behavioral traffic safety. Yes. So yeah, those are due in February, and then also the TCRP synthesis statement is due in March. So, this is the time to really start formulating and solidifying any kind of key topics and teams that we'd like to work on for those deadlines. So yeah, at this point, does anyone have any thoughts on these or suggestions for additional topics that they'd like to put out there? Again, I can send this out to the broader committee to solicit the teams. But looks like we have some people sharing in the chat. Janet has worked on some tactile delineator work. Great. Yes, and Ling was mentioning about the research problem statement. I haven't heard if it was accepted or rejected. I think they're still deciding on the panels or the projects that they're going to develop panels for. So I haven't seen those at all. I don't know if anyone else has been monitoring the panels more closely than me, if you've seen any from TCRP.
If the panels have been named and issued, you mean?
What's that?
If the panels have been like decided and issued. Yeah, I think I wanted to, well, first, for like either, like Yohai was saying, if you have a particular interest in one of these topic areas now, you can either indicate in the chat or follow up with Yohai about it, so that before we get to January, again, we can continue the development of some of these topic ideas and figure out which CRP area would be appropriate for them. Yohai, to your point on the panel members, yeah, I think we as a committee, we haven't in the past, we've been more reactive, and like when we learn about when there is panel availability, and a couple ideas that spring to mind. One, we can try to connect with Bill in terms of when some of those opportunities might be emerging. We can also, I think, and this could be on Judy and I, if we see a anticipated project that concerns accessibility, either primarily or secondarily, we could potentially reach out to the TRB staff person that is assigned to that, because they're the ones that are filling out the panel rosters and looking at applicants and things like that. And we could say, hey, we noticed TCRP such and such is anticipated. Do you need help identifying panel members to fit that?
Right.
And so
right.
we can reach out to them and see if we can, you know, help make that connection, proactively.
I thought
Nice.
that when I signed up for CRP listservs, you could, well, I know you could sign up for the varying committees, the various industries, but don't you get notified of when they're looking for panelists through the listserv? I've gotten some notices like
I think
ACRP.
sometimes
Okay, but it's not consistent.
it
I
might
don't
be,
know.
and it
It
might
can't
be that I
hurt
miss it. Yeah, but it can't hurt trying
to
to
sign up.
attack
I
this from
signed up
multiple
for all
angles.
of them. Yeah. Yeah. Good
Mhm.
idea. Yeah.
Nice.
Any other questions for Yohai? And thanks for the comments in the chat. I'm trying to make a note of them. And Yohai, thanks for, again, moving the ball so effectively with developing these research teams and getting the ACRP statement selected is anticipated. That's a big deal, obviously, and both with the topic area concerning our committee and just in general. So great job with your work on this, and we'll certainly talk more about research needs at the general committee meeting at TRB.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, and I'll follow up with a more specific email looking for people to sign up for these teams.
Great, thanks again. So with our last couple minutes, a couple things we wanted to touch on. One, for those that have indicated interest in helping with the CATE conference from the equity committee. I know there's been some confusion about what's the latest with that. I think Judy and I haven't heard anything either is the update in terms of that. So we will try to find out when and how they will be needing assistance for that. And so we apologize for that being not hearing any updates about that, but we haven't either in terms of that. So we're not quite sure where things are with that, but as soon as we know more, and we'll try with our contacts at that committee, we'll try to see if we can give them a nudge and have them move things along with that. We also, from the University of Minnesota, who's leading this MADI program, the Mobility Access and Transportation Insecurity program, they're going to have an introduction and listening session webinar to talk more about the program. And essentially they're across the US, they're looking to develop these implementation demonstration projects on public transit and helping mitigate transportation insecurities to access and use public transit for different communities. And so they're having this webinar, which I'll post in the chat, about what they're doing with the program, and want to see that we help get the word out about it. So if you'd like to register for that webinar on November 13th, please do. We also, I want to highlight a couple upcoming TRB webinars that are occurring that are pertain to our committee a little bit. One is on alternative services for ADA paratransit riders. That's based on recent TCRP research report that was published. That's going to be on November 15th. And then we're sponsoring this webinar on accessible floating bus stops on November 16th, and BZ is going to be one of the leads of that webinar, I believe. So that'll be a great one as well. And we encourage you to sign up and attend there. I know we're at time, but any other questions on these or any other quick announcements that folks wanted to get in before we wrap up? And thanks for continued comments, Jim and Melissa. We'll make sure going once, going twice, but as we're wrapping up, make sure if you haven't already to sign into the chat with your name so that we get your attendance here. And if there aren't any other questions or anything right now, please reach out to Judy and I at any time if you have any ideas you wanted to share, whether it's in follow-up to what we discussed today or just in general of a another committee or another organization or opportunity you identify that might be relevant for AME50. We look forward to seeing you all at the annual committee, whether committee meeting at TRB in January, whether it's in person or virtual at our planned hybrid committee meeting that we'll have. And you know, like we pointed out earlier, there's going to be a lot of great session activities that our committee is involved with that we think will be very exciting this year. So yeah, Judy, anything else I missed?
Just please, if you have any updates to your profile on my TRB, do it. You know that they're cleansing it and purging it, and we don't want you to go away. So make sure that your contact information is updated current on my TRB. And so appreciative of all of your input. Really, we have a great committee. So thank you all. And we'll send out the minutes and recording. I've recorded it, so we'll have that. And remember, our website is always available to you. We post it's trbaccessmobility.org is our AME50 website. So please, visit that to get any current information. So thank you all very much. Be safe and have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Good to see you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.